It's the silence, followed by the noise. It's the welcoming brew around the table.
And the pounding adrenaline of your first call out.
From a plume of water bursting from the ground,
to being soaked in sweat from the heat.
It's successfully planning an event at short notice, and the pride of pulling on a shirt for the first time.
Today, it's the panic on people's faces.
Tomorrow, it's the support from the communities we serve.
It's feeling anxious about starting a new role, only to be supported and inspired by amazing colleagues.
It's comforting families who've lost loved ones.
And heartfelt thanks from those we have saved.
It's the gravity of shutting down an unsafe business to turning around the lives of vulnerable people.
It's the driving grotto that makes Christmas that little bit brighter.
And the humour that gets you through stressful times.
From training that pushes you to your limits.
Making positive changes and challenging the status quo.
It's feeling excited, included and exhilarated.
Yet having the space to feel vulnerable and exhausted too.
It's the memories that stick with you for life, the good ones and the bad.
It's a great feeling, serving your community.
It's great to be part of something bigger than yourself.
And it's great that no day is the same.
It's all of these things that make us who we are.
It's all these things that make us Nottinghamshire Fire and Rescue Service.
This is me.
This is us. And
this is our story.
Proud to be rated good by HMIC FRS.
Which you now?
We've got a minute to go.
Have we got a minute?
Yeah, sorry.
You're very strict, Catherine. So
I am.
that's my watch. I always set it in case I'm standing for the 39 bus and thinking, I'm going to get. We'll make a start. Are we tuned in and live and smiling and all that? So I was just making sure we're all right on the television. Anyway, my name's John Clark, for those who don't know, and at the moment I'm the chair of the Fire Authority Finance Committee. I think because we've got lots of new members, if we go around, and we'll probably forget their names, but we should remember them because there's not only a few of us. So introduce yourself to Clark.
Councillor Ali from Nottingham City Council, a member of the finance team.
And Councillor Richard Butler from Nottinghamshire County Council.
Terry Cox from Nottinghamshire County Council.
Councillor Jim Vernon standing in for Councillor Jodie Stoll.
Councillor John Siemens, Nottingham County Council.
Captain Andrew Rule, Nottingham City Council.
Great, thank you very much. Well, so we need to, anybody needs to declare any interest? Oh, sorry, I've got John. That's it, really focus. Apologies first. Have we got any?
We've got apologies from Councillor Jodie Stoll, for whom Councillor Jim Vernon is substituting.
Jim.
And also for Mick Sharman, for whom Damien West is substituting.
Yeah, that's fine. And, now moving on to the declarations of interest.
Actually, Mr Chairman, did you get the apologies for Councillor Lee? Because I'm subbing for him, I think, aren't I?
I haven't seen anything.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Cool.
So declarations of interest, anything in there that you think might affect pecuniary, non-pecuniary? No. You all right, Andrew? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that's moving on. We've got the minutes of meeting held on 21st of March, which is on page 3, and it goes through to 10. So I'll move them from the chair. And can I have a seconder, please? Somebody who's actually there, Richard.
Yes, I'm happy to second them.
Okay. Are we agreed? Thank you very much. And moving on to item 4, and that's the revenue and capital outturn, and that's over to you, Bev.
Right, thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. So this report reports on the finance outturn for the financial year 24-25. So it goes through the revenue position and the capital position and gives information on where we've had significant variances. So in terms of the overall position, if we go to 2.1 in the report, it tells you the revenue budget was originally approved at £52.688 million. Then during the year we've had some specific earmarked reserves that have meant that budget's increased to £52.72 million. And in year, some of the members obviously on this committee have been on the committee historically, or know that we've been reporting that we've been forecasting an underspend. and in principle we'd agreed at the previous meetings that we'd look at using that underspend to fund the capital programme. So in relation to that, we have undertaken a voluntary revenue provision. I'll explain what that is in a second. But in terms of that, we've allocated £1.2 million as the voluntary revenue provision, which then means we've got an underspend of £722,000, so 1.46 of the overall budget. And then in terms of use of that underspend, we're then asking for 621,000 of it to be transferred to earmarked reserves to fund some one-off expenditure in future years. And then that means there'd be 13k underspend that gets allocated to the general fund reserve. So in terms of that voluntary revenue provision, so in terms of the capital budgets, where we fund the capital by borrowing, it means that we then have to charge that to the revenue account, and we do that normally through what's called your minimum revenue provision, and we have a policy that sets out what that minimum is. So this is in addition to that we'll be putting a voluntary revenue provision aside to fund that capital that we're funded by borrowing. So eventually we would have had to pay that amount of borrowing off, but we're doing it early. And in 2.15 table 2, it shows the impact of doing that. So it shows the reason we're doing that is so that we get that saving that's shown in table 2 in terms of the revenue budget then going forward. So in future years over the medium term financial plan, we're getting that money back profiled as set out in that table. In terms of where we've been forecasting before, in 2.18, which is on page 19 of the agenda pack, previously at the last Finance and Resources Committee we were reporting that we'd have an underspend of £1.29 million. So looking at the underspend before the VRP, the comparative figure is £2 million, and the reason that underspend has gone up is in relation to some things that happened in the last sort of quarter of the year since that previous report. So the main area is that we received £450,000 back, which is a credit from a fire service airwaves credit following a Court of Appeals decision that was made. So it was something that we were aware is a national credit that's been allocated to us. It's part of a national charge that we receive. So we were aware that obviously the court case was going, but we didn't know the timing of it or the amount that we'd get back, and that we have actually now received that back.
Can I just stop you there? Can you just explain the airwaves? It's a long-standing. It was a nightmare when I was chair of the police authority, which was years ago. If you could just explain a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So there is a emergency services network communication replacement program. So all of the radios that operational people carry, we have them in all our fire engines, all of our frontline appliances. They all operate on a main scheme network that is run by a company called Airwave, and that is provided through Motorola, who are looking at that. There is currently a national programme going on which is looking at replacing that. That is across fire, but also across police, across ambulance, and across other category 1 responders like Coast Guard and people like that. So the scale of it is huge. Fire service is one part of that. We have a representative from the East Midlands seconded onto that national working group, but that is currently running significantly over budget and behind timescale against the national project that was being run there. So that is ongoing. In that interim time, there is annual extensions which have been put in place. We're currently in one of those annual extensions. We have to pay to use the airwave systems for their installation, but then also their ongoing contractual work with that. And this reimbursement was following a national challenge against the providers of that scheme that they've been overcharging. That was found by what used to be the Monopolies Commission, and the current term for that I can't remember, apologies, but that was found that they'd been overcharging, so therefore a reimbursement was made to all emergency sector partners who use Airwave. So hopefully in a very small nutshell. It's a well received credit. So.
Yeah, because we had it with VAT on leisure centres, if you remember the VAT, and then it's a long battle done by the LGA, cross-party, everything else, and we got significant sums back. I know again we got back to $1 million or more probably back. So it gets altered, it gets adjusted in the end, but this is a particularly thorny thing because it went on its swim. Was it O2 that split up originally? It was too big, wasn't it? BT or something like that.
They broke up. So I can't remember the provider, but they split that up, and it's, that is still ongoing. The national project is it was paused for a couple of years. It's now restarting again. It draws on resources from ourselves as a fire service, but across the whole emergency sector in terms of providing resources to that. But there is still an ambition to try and, well, there is a requirement to deliver a replacement for the current airwave system, and that's going to be reinvigorated at a national level again.
That's it. That's great. Sorry about that, but I just thought we've got some new members who need to know that.
That's fine, thank you. Then in terms of where the underspends moved again, so it's in relation to gas and electricity and fuel mainly, which are obviously areas where the forecasting those prices are quite they're quite volatile. So it's quite difficult to forecast where we're going to be with those, and obviously we've left the forecast being quite prudent, and it has come in under that. So in terms of as well, so I mentioned previously that we want to allocate £621,000 of the underspend to earmarked reserves. So that's in Table 4, which is at 2.21, which is page 20 of the agenda pack. So where we're looking to allocate those reserves are there's £20,000 to support senior leadership development. There's £40,000 to support some procurement support in relation to two big areas of procurement we've got to undertake. So one's the MAC contract, which is the mechanical and electrical contracts, and one's the fleet maintenance contract. So they're both big areas of spend and quite complex procurement processes that we have to go through. So we wanted to sort of allocate some specific resource to enable those procurements to be undertaken. There's £40,000 to support a quantity surveyor in relation to the Access and Inclusion Capital Scheme, and this is where we've had the current or the original contractors gone into administration and liquidation. So we've had to find a new administrator, and we're obviously looking back at their work to challenge the work that's been completed in relation to that. So that's why we want the quantity surveyor to help with those pieces of work. There's £20,000 allocated to support delivering the sustainability strategy. So in the past we've had a baseline report done by a consultant, and that money would then enable them to come back and actually pull us a strategy together about our sustainability strategy. There's 120 allocated to support the C4MIS project. So that's C4MIS is a system that we have that has all the risk information on that. When the firefighters go and arrive at buildings, it gives them all the risk information about the building.
Yes, and C4MIS is our central system, so it holds all premises information, all personal information of all vulnerable people that we attend, and then all property information of all of our high-rise, high-risk buildings and premises that we inspect as well. So it really is our sort of central system to all of the work we do in communities.
And in relation to that, we've obviously got a capital programme.
Sorry, how close to that to real time is that?
It's active. It's live update. So if we go and inspect a property today, they'll upload the information into that. That then crosses over to our mobilising system. So if we inspect a high-rise premises that we find some issues with, that would immediately affect the information which is passed to crews if we're called to that premises. So that's updated. That's refreshed every early hours of the morning. Every morning the whole system refreshes and makes sure it's current and accurate. But the relay of information would be immediate if we find something that's of use to our operational crews.
Thank you.
So the reason the 120 there is at the moment we've got a capital project in terms of the C4MIS system where they're doing some development on it, and the 120 is there to fund the ongoing revenue cost of a person to keep that system up to date. That's why the 120 has been allocated there, because it's something that we've not got in place at the moment in the revenue budget. So it'll allow that for the next few years. Project management support. So obviously in terms of the capital programme, there's a number of capital projects, quite a significant number of capital projects. So we need to bolster the project support in terms of the support for those projects, bringing those forward. Health and safety support, that is around, again, within the health and safety, we're looking at contaminants. There's big pieces of work nationally going off around contaminants, so it'll support that project. And there has been a delay in or looking to recruit people into the health and safety team, which then has a knock-on effect because somebody's not been in place. So we can support the work that they need to deliver. And then there's some support for the business intelligence team, support their team. So they're the ones that look at our dashboards and our data. So obviously by using that data and having that data available, it then makes us be able to make better decisions. So that's why we want to support that area. And then in my table, an area, I think it probably is in yours as well, seems to have dropped off. If you add the table down, it won't add up. So there's 200,000 for the RMS, so the replacement mobilising system. So you're probably aware that we've got a joint project with Derbyshire to replace the mobilising system. And obviously that's a big area of spend for, and it's a big area of risk. So we're putting some into the reserve, just in case if we've got any risk there to mitigate against going forward. Sorry.
Is that the pages system?
Yeah, part of it's the paging, yeah, when people ring up, and obviously we take the calls, and then it mobilises everybody. So that's where we're wanting to allocate the underspend to. So the remainder of the report, if we go back sort of 2.5 onwards, talks about where the overall position, so looking back historically, so some members will have heard the reasons for the variances before, but it gives the reasons for the variances compared to the revised budget to the outturn position. So one of the most significant area of variance is on whole time pay. So again, we've been reporting this previously throughout the year that we were projecting an underspend on whole time pay, and it is a managed position because ultimately this is the area where because we only get 1 year settlements at the moment, we've obviously got pressure and we know we've got deficits going forward. So we have to sort of manage that, knowing that we might need to take something out in the future on a permanent basis, and therefore the establishments below establishment, with a view to the fact that if we had to do that, we wouldn't be making people redundant; those vacancies would be there. So it is a managed position, but ultimately that means in year we do end up with an underspend against where the budget was set. And I'm going to hand over to Tom now, who's the Assistant Head of Finance, who's going to take you through some of the variances.
Yeah, okay. So morning all. So obviously the next variance I'll go through is in relation to the on-call pay. So that had a small underspend, and that was largely just because the budget pay award was at 5%. But sorry, paragraph 2.6.
What page are we on?
Page 15.
Page 15. Sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, so the budget pay award was 5%, but the when it was agreed nationally, it was agreed at 4%, so that led to a underspend in that area, and then within the non-uniform pay, which is on the following page in paragraph 2.7. So within there again we had a similar underspend as to the on-call, where there's a national pay increase of £1,290, and again we budgeted a pay award of 5%.
Could you, on 2.7, where you talk about the non-uniform pay being an overspend, but there's also a saving as well, which is good. But then we talk about the savings have been offset by temporary resources supporting ICT. Is that basically the fact that you've got some temporary extra staff in to do with ICT, and do we know sort of how long that's for? I realise it's probably more of a personnel question, but
no, during 24-25 they were temporary, but during that year, as part of the setting of the budget for 25-26, they have been substantiated now. They are needed on an ongoing basis.
Right.
So they were built, that structure's now been built into the 25-26 budget.
Oh, I see.
Part of the budget
Okay.
setting. So yeah. So they weren't included for the 24-25 budget.
Right. So as we go through this year,
yes.
then that's going to take that.
Yes. Yeah. That pressure will go away. Yeah. And then also offsetting the underspend as well is the vacancy factor. So we actually budgeted for 10% vacancy factor, and it actually came in at 7.8.
Yes. Right. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'll move on to paragraph 2.9, so the employee costs, where there's an underspend of 216,000. Obviously, a large amount of that is, or 123,000 of that is a technical adjustment which we have to do for unused annual leave and flexi time. This is reversed out, and there's another comment on this in paragraph 217, and then there's also £82,000 underspend in relation to training, and that's like as the report says, largely due to time and availability of training courses.
Is that training for both uniformed and non-uniformed? Is it across the board, or
It's across the whole of the training budget.
Okay.
So next there with a large or larger underspend is premises, so that was 219,000 underspend. So obviously, as Bev covered earlier, quite a large amount of that is relation to gas and electricity, but obviously those underspends were countered a bit by an overspend in relation to business rates. The majority of that is due to the delayed sale of the old headquarters. But that sale is expected to go through the next hopefully few months. So that will leave that overspend.
Can we just go back to 2.9? Yeah. What is a resilience contractor and a civil contingency operator?
So if I can answer that one for you. Okay, so we have if we have a degradation of our whole-time firefighters, either through pandemic, COVID, industrial action or something like that, we still have the requirement now to provide the statutory response. We still have to provide fire engines. We can't rely on the military as we used to many years ago, and where each authority has to have a provision in place. The provision that this authority agreed previously was that we would have resilience contractors. So it is both members of staff who sign up to a resilience contract, so they say that they wouldn't take industrial action or they undertake additional training. And then we also have a number of non-service personnel who are trained to a lower level to be able to provide or support an operational response. So the resilience contractors are people who sign up to the additional contract, so they're operational members of staff who will come in if there's industrial action or required to work outside of their normal role. CCOs, civil contingency operators, are the members of the public, for example, who would carry out a limited role for us if we need them due to degradation.
Okay, interesting.
Sorry. So obviously then there was 197 overspend in relation to plan maintenance. That was largely due to works on training towers and Bestwood and the security costs at Bestwood Lodge. Within the budget monitoring, this was but basically we did plan to have reserves to cover this spend, but because of the underspend position, which Bev has previously gone through, basically those reserves weren't drawn down. Then I've got 119,000 overspend in relation to basically building repairs and maintenance. So these are the active ones. Obviously, the largest element of that was water leak at Highfields, which cost 24,000, and admittedly we have got an insurance claim outstanding for that. So the next area is transport-related costs, which had 123,000 overspend. The 386,000 of it is in relation to planned and unplanned fleet maintenance. So this is due to we've got ageing appliances, but as you'll see within the capital programme, which I'll cover later, that I think we had 2 delivered towards the end of 24-25, and then we've got yeah. So as there's 17 new appliances, and 2 came at the end of last year, and the remainder are going in this year. So we'd expect that budget to decrease. Then we have the 428,000 underspend relating to fuel, which Bev covered earlier, and then 82,000 in relation to outsourced vehicle maintenance, again, which is due to basic defects and modifications. So, no questions. So I'll move on to the supply and services.
Not a just an observation really, and it's a positive observation. In 2.1, it's not very often nowadays you read a report that refers to cost of gas and electricity going down. So obviously I suspect that's just a temporary thing. I think we need to be prepared that in a few months' time we'll be reading that it's all going up again. Anyway, sorry about that. Just an observation.
So supplies and services, there was 392,000 underspend. Again, most of that is from what Bev touched on earlier in relation to the 450 the airwaves credit that we received. Then there's 85,000 overspend in software maintenance contracts, which has been caused by a combination of increases, and then 130,000 underspend in relation to protective clothing, and that's basically due to a delay in a equipment trial. So I'll move on to the next one with the large variance is paragraph 2.15, which is in relation to capital financing costs. That's shown just over £1 million overspend. Again, Bev touched on this earlier, so the vast majority of that is due to the voluntary revenue provision we've done as part of reducing the in-year underspend, which obviously generates those revenue savings, which Bev covered earlier within table 2. And then we have then obviously that is countered by £172,000 underspend in relation to the minimum revenue provision, and 141,000 underspend on interest payable. So then the next thing I'd like to bring attention to is the efficiency savings. So that's from paragraph 2.2 6.19. And so there within table 3, we set to achieve savings of 284,000, and we basically achieved savings in 24-25 of 381,000. So we overachieved by 97,000.
Can we carry that forward? They'll let you do that, you know, when you say.
Well, so within these savings, some are one-off in the year, but some are, but some of the savings are recurring. So some will automatically be carried forward into 25-26.
Thank you.
Yeah. So in the next section, the reserve section, obviously, Bev's gone through table 4, which is the amount we wanted to move to reserves, and then within table 5, we're also asking for basically reallocation of some small amounts within reserves that are no longer required. So well, in total, we're looking at moving just over 26,000 into the replacement mobilising system project. So these are all base items that have been or reserves have been reviewed internally, and the amounts have basically been identified as not being required. Yeah, then table 6 shows that what level of reserves that we will be carrying forward from 24-25. So with the adjustments, our earmark reserves are going up from 5.8 million to 6.4, and the general fund reserve is just increasing by the 13,000 to just under 5.1 million. So now, if we just move on to the capital programme side. So table 7 shows a summary of the 24-25 capital programme. So we had a capital budget of 5.4 million. That was approved, and we spent 4.6. Within that, there is 50,000 of budget where we reallocated it to revenue because it didn't meet basically the definition of capital spend. So following that, we had a in-year variance of 745,583 of it is slippage, and 162,000 is net underspend. So if just go through the variances, obviously within the transport programme, there's only basically net slippage of 6,000 on a 1.9 million pound programme. So then within equipment, there was 230,000 net slippage and 8,000 underspend. So obviously all the detailed breakdown of all the capital projects is shown in Appendix 3. But the main items of slippage is the replacement duty rig, which slipped 103,000, which was largely due to delays in items being delivered. And then the body cameras slipped 65,000, and at the end of the financial year, the items had been ordered, and they're expected to be delivered early this financial year. And then then reading apparatus replacement, there was £60,000 slippage. And again, that project is expected to be completed in 25-26.
Just a quick question. The replacement duty rig and body cameras, are they purchased from overseas then? Or are they local purchase?
So we purchased them through a framework, so approved framework as part of Fire and Rescue Service Network.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I don't know off the top of my head where they come from. I can find that out there and let you know, definitely. Unless you know.
Yeah, the concerning words there is the delay in shipping.
Yeah.
That means frontline officers are being compromised.
So I can provide assurance there's no compromise to it. The body-worn cameras actually arrived this week, so they are with us. But that is an additional step. They're not replacing anything. We're taking the step to issue body-worn cameras to our frontline officers and operating crews. The duty rig uniform I'm sporting today. This is the replacement one that was delayed because of the shipping, but it wasn't a safety critical replacement. It was part of our accessibility around providing better uniform for people. So there was no compromise to safety or the operating of anybody.
And this is a national framework agreement for the whole fire service that we've got.
That we procure through now, yeah. So wherever we can, we try and use the frameworks that are in place because they've been thoroughly tested, they've been properly taken through the approach with that. So we do try to use those where we can. But I will get that confirmation by their phone for you.
I think at one time, Terry, it's a few years back, so I remember that there was about 40% of stuff came from France and Germany.
Yeah.
So there is that delay, and I know locally on a local council to get CCTV cameras is a good 6 to 9 months order, and it's all red tape.
Yeah.
Really.
That's the problem with these national framework agreements is that.
Yeah, you're stuck in it.
Yeah. It's something that I'd be very interested in.
Frustrating.
Yeah.
Frustrating. Yeah. Sorry, Tom.
Thank you.
Yeah, so if I move on to the estate section where there was net slippage of 220,000 and underspend of 25,000. So the largest item of slippage was basically replacement boiler and building management system. So the boiler is, we're replacing the boiler at our Highfield station. They did forecast it to be complete again in 24-25, but it's been slipped and will be delivered in this financial year. Then our access and inclusion, that obviously had a small slippage of 27,000. Obviously we did have, as Beth mentioned, the previous supply did go into administration, so a new supply has been identified, and that slippage will be spent this financial year. And then if we move on to the £25,000 underspends, so that was split across 3 projects. So some improvements at the Service Development Centre. As that project's nearly completed, project manager has carried forward some budget, but then he's released 14,000 as that's not required. And then there was some snagging in relation to the joint headquarters here, and £10,000 of that budget has been released. So if we move on to IT and communications, where the capital programme had a net slippage of 127,000 and 129,000 net underspend. So with this, the slippage is largely within 3 projects. So the CFMS project slipped 43,000, and CFMS we have discussed earlier, and the replacement mobilising system slipped for 40,000. Obviously within the replacement mobilising system, this is obviously one of our larger schemes, so it has got a budget of over £1 million. So even though it has slipped 40,000, within that budget it is only 3.8%. And then replacement the ICT replacement equipment and infrastructure slipped 36,000, which is due to be spent this financial year. So in relation to the underspend, we've had 70,000 within airwave mobilisation. So basically, these costs are going to be picked up as part of our tri-service project, which is with ourselves, which is obviously a tri-service. It's Nottingham, Derby, and Leicester.
Sorry, can I just go back to CFMS, if I may?
Yeah.
The slippage with it hasn't affected the functionality of the programme, has it?
No, if I can answer. No, they're all improvements that are being made. So mainly this is around the purchase of quick screens. What that is in my sort of lay person's language is the user's interface. It's just making it more accessible and easier for operational crews, members of staff to use. So it takes all of the very clever technology in the background and makes it simple to use on the front screen. So it will improve efficiency and the use of it going forward, but it hasn't affected the operating of how it works. It's just a bit of a longer system at the moment for people to use. So once we have implemented that fully, it will be a better operating system for our crews to use.
Yeah, so the command support unit software had an underspend of 55,000. So this project has been deferred and will be basically developed as part of a later stage of the RMS project. And then we had some small basic underspends within coveralls, and then the slight £7,000 overspend in relation to airwave radios. So if we move on to the section within post-budget decisions impacting on the 25-26 to the 28-29 capital programme. So obviously within the file authority we did a capital budget was approved on the 28th of February, but then obviously that has then been adjusted for what was approved at the March Finance Resources Committee. At March we approved a slippage of 1.7 million and a new capital project in relation to the breathing apparatus, washers. So the next bullet point is what amendments where we are requesting Finance Resources Committee to approve. So obviously we have the 583,000 net slippage that was shown within the earlier table, and obviously I've gone through the projects that have slipped, and then we have two additions. There's 250,000 for the CFMS Phase 2 project. And obviously that's going to be funded from earmarked reserves. So and obviously that was part of the transfer to reserves from the underspend. And within the electric vehicle recharge, there's a £36,000 increase. 28,000 of that is funded from a grant we've already received from Nottingham City Council, and 8,000 is from revenue, and this will enable the scheme to roll out to the Mansfield and Highfield stations. Then we've got 671,000, which is reversal of forecast underspend. So within the RMS project we did previously report a forecasted underspend when it should have been slipped into 25-26. So that's just a correction of RMS budget. Then we've got a reversal of an underspend that was within the coveralls budget, and that's been reallocated to the special equipment project. Then we have £100,000 budget reduction in the site pass scheme as costs are forecast to come in lower than the original approved budget. And then the last point is just to note the combat fire behaviour training unit, which is also known as the Service Development Centre Phase 2, has basically the scopes been reduced to ensure it can be delivered within the budget. Following with the capital budget, table 8 shows what was approved at February committee of February Fire Authority, and then with the approvals from the March Fire and Resources Committee, and the adjustments have just gone through. The movement in the capital programme will be 3.3 million. So on table 8 shows the movement from 29.8 million to the 33.1 million. Then table 9 summarises below what the how that programme is split between transport, equipment, estates and IT. Again, there's within the pack, Appendix C just show the project scheme by scheme. So just obviously put some out within vehicle or within the transport section of the programme. We have 1.6 million expected to be spent on or forecasted spent on fire appliances. So this touches on what I mentioned earlier, that we are expecting delivery to replace our aging fire engines. We've got 1.1 million on special appliances, again within transport, and then the other large schemes within the equipment. The largest item in that is replacement of the road traffic collision equipment, so that's 900,000. But within estates, obviously there's the access and inclusion project, which we discussed earlier, and then the other large scheme is the planned replacement of Stockhill Fire Station. And then within the IT and communications, the significant amount of that budget is within the replacement mobilisation system, and that's £1.75 million.
So can I just in terms of slippage overall, are there any common themes as to what's caused the slippage? And there's no risk that where projects are slipping into the next financial year, it's going to result in cost increases?
No, I mean it's various reasons for the slippage. Just thinking at in terms of access and inclusion, obviously the contract went into the administration, and then in terms of like the other big areas where we're
thinking like the replacement boiler at Stockhill Fire Station.
No, in terms of that the reason that got delayed was initially we were looking at being a larger project, so we did secure some funding from Salix, and during the year we've reported that we actually moved away from that and gave this funding back because that was going to be a heat pump.
Right.
And actually when we went out and procured for it, the cost of it was the grant funding wasn't going to cover it, and there was going to be excessive amount of money required from us. So that's why that then got delayed, and then it's been scoped back now to be just a replacement boiler, a normal boiler that's going to be replaced. And then in terms of like RMS, so again, there have been reports that are coming through in relation to RMS in terms of the impact of the delay that has had. So there has been some financial implications of that, and obviously we've built that into the budgets going forward, into the reserves going forward.
Okay. Is that it? Yeah. Is there further questions? None, so I move the recommendations there on page 26 there. There's 3 bullet points. Scrutinise and gain scrutinise and gain assurance of the contents of the report, approve the use of the underspend and approve the transfer of the 621k. I'll move from the chair.
I think it goes on to the next page, Chair.
Sorry?
It goes on to the next page as well.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm looking at the front one. Yeah, approve the reallocation of earmarked reserve and approve the slippage of 0.583 million. Also to approve the net increase to the capital programme, and that's of 1.49 million, and 10.7, which is approved the reprofile capital programme, section 2.37, table 8, Appendix C, which will mean nothing to anybody listening to this, but we've got it in front of us. So if you can vote on that, and do I have a seconder? Yeah. Thank you, Terry. Agreed. Thank you. Okay, Beth, there's a hell of a load of stuff in this, and sometimes you look at it and think, I don't really understand that. And then I'm going driving home and I'm thinking, light comes on, which is the best way because we've got new members.
Yeah.
Which is the best way so as it can clarify things.
If you want, you're welcome to phone me or send me an email if you want more information on anything. And then going on from that, if you want to face-to-face meeting, Teams meeting to go through it in anything in detail, just let me know.
Thank you. Okay. Right, thank you. Right, we'll move on then to, where are we? Item 5, which is internal audit report.
So Andrew's here from Internal Audit, so he'll take you through the report. So the purpose of this is to go through and give the Head of Internal Audit's annual opinion in terms of internal audit and our controls, and then it also presents 3 internal audits that have been completed since the last time we gave an internal audit update in January. So they were part of the 24-25 audit plan. So I'll hand over to Andrew.
Yeah, okay, so our internal audit annual report starts on page 40 of your pack. I'll just go through the main highlights of it. Overall, the report is very positive. Paragraph 11 on page 42. This gives our overall audit opinion for the year, elements of governance, risk management and control, the audits we've done in the year and our follow-up of previous audit recommendations. Paragraph 15 summarises the audits we've done in the year. 3 were substantial assurance, our highest level of assurance, and 3 were reasonable assurance, which is our medium level, and none were given limited assurance. Paragraph 16, the table, gives a summary of the recommendations from each of those audits, the 6 audits we did in the year. Paragraph 19 is a summary of our action tracking, where we track the implementation of previous audit recommendations from prior years. The implementation rate of 83% is a high figure, and the remainder are in progress and receiving attention. I'll come back to this in Appendix A in a bit. Paragraph 20, we are required to give an opinion on the services arrangements for governance, risk management and control, and this is summarised in paragraph 23 for governance, paragraph 24 for risk management, paragraph 25 for control, and for all 3 of those our opinion was substantial assurance, which is again the highest level of assurance, and for each of those categories, governance, risk management and control, I've put 3 bullet points, which are the main reasons behind our opinion, and I'll be coming back to this in Appendix B. Paragraph 26 is our internal audit performance, which is satisfactory, and it's all set out in there in the table. Appendix A on page 49. This is a bit more detail on our action tracking and the implementation of recommendations from our audit reports in previous years. Priority 1 actions are the most important ones. The table at the top, the pie chart at the top left shows that 3 priority 1 actions from the previous year are still in progress. Those are all from an audit of contract management. The 3 bullet points on your page 49 summarise these actions and show that progress is being made on them, and SLT is monitoring these actions and they're expected to be addressed in the next few months. The other pie charts show that all other actions are either complete or in progress. Appendix B, or is it Appendix 1? Appendix 1, I've got more than one Appendix 1 here. Okay, well this is going from page 50 onward. These are detailed assurance maps that give the detail to support our substantial assurance opinions on governance, risk management and control. So that's going from page 50 through to your page 57. On Appendix C, we've got different appendix numbers. It's my Appendix C, and it's Appendix 1 to the report. So this is on your page 58. So page 58 and 59 are our audit plan for the coming year, 2025-26, the year that has already just started. So we're planning to do 6 audits in the year. The ones we're planning to do this year are in the 2025-26 column, which is the 3rd column in from the right, where I've put it. We've allocated a budget of 11 days to each. So the 6 audits that we're planning to do, these will be more fully developed, the scope of them, during the planning stage of each audit. But if I just briefly go through the 6 audits we're going to do this year. The first is establishment control, which relates to the staffing structure and how it's set within budget, and all appointments are made within the structure and changes to the structure are authorised. The second one is control over payments. So we're looking at supervisory control and separation of duties over payments, possibly with a focus on payments that go through balance sheet accounts following a recent fraud that was in the news elsewhere. The third one, Cardiff checks, which is an in-depth look at a small number of payments, typically larger ones.
Can we just explain that? Cardiff checks.
Cardiff checks.
Yeah, can you just explain it?
Yeah.
If you've not seen it before.
Yeah, Cardiff checks. So they're an in-depth look at a small number of payments. With typically larger ones, and we look at in great detail at the need for the purchase to be made, that it was correctly ordered, that it was within budget, that it gave value for money, that procurement was properly done, the goods were received and they were properly invoiced and paid. So it's an in-depth deep dive into the procurement process on a smallish number of, say, 4 or 5 payments. Okay, the 4th audit we're going to do is looking at the programme tracker for the annual delivery plan, which will look at the control and monitoring of capital and revenue programmes and projects. The 5th one is we'll be looking at Estates Department project management, in particular its use of external project managers. So it's sort of looking at the contract management of project management. The 6th audit we're going to do is ICT strategy, which is a standard audit topic for which there's an established audit programme, and we're going to do that towards the end of the year to allow progress to be made on the fire services digital maturity assessment. Okay, so that's the plan for the coming year.
Can I just ask, the 6 audits that you're doing, what's the average cost on each audit in timelines?
So we've put 11 days budget for each of those, and then there's, which comes to 66 days, you'll see in that column.
Yeah.
Then there's a bit of extra time, sort of management time and doing this annual report, etc. So it's 81 days in total. And then that's multiplied by our charge out rate for the year. Is that what you're asking, the actual cost of it?
Just roughly what it's going to cost the authority
I think it
to have
comes
these
to
audits?
I think it costs about 28,000, 29,000 a year.
Yeah, it's around 30,000. Can you remember what the day rate is? It's
Can't
about,
remember exactly, no.
about 135, is it?
Oh, it's more than that.
I can find out what the day rate is.
It's almost £30,000 the cost of this, which is we charge to the fire service.
Right. And this is external auditors that are doing it?
This is internal. Yeah, it's where, I mean, I work for the county council, where they're internal auditors, but we're doing the internal audit for the fire service, even though we're not actually.
Well, rather than having an internal audit function ourselves, because obviously then we'd have to have multiple auditors with different skills internally. We outsource and use Nottinghamshire County Council. So it is significantly cheaper than the cost that we do pay is less than one officer post.
So you just want like KPMG.
Thank you. That's the external.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the end of the annual report, and then following that we've issued 3 more audit reports since the last finance committee. So the audit reports get put into this report. So from page 61 onwards, these are the audit reports we've issued since the last committee. The first one is the rota system to pay on-call firefighters. Our opinion on that is the highest level, again, substantial assurance. There were no recommendations in this report, no control weaknesses, but the positive findings are in paragraph 4.1. Briefly, that the system's robust, there's controls over access, the controls over authorisation of hours done, the payments are properly recorded and payments are checked. There's a process for late claims and there's a process for preventing duplicate payments. The next audit report we've issued was on page 64. So this is looking at the National Fire Standard on leading the service. We gave a reasonable assurance opinion on that, which is our medium rating. The positives are in paragraph, well, they're on page 66. A gap analysis has been done to identify the actions the service need to do to meet this standard. The tasks have been specified which are sufficient. Sufficient progress has been made to date. Evidence of progress is recorded and reporting of progress is effective. We made 7 recommendations in this report, going from page number 68 onwards. They're all priority 2 recommendations, which is our sort of medium level, including a minor revision for a recent update to the standard, recording the officers responsible for each action, and recommendations 4, 5, 6, 7 are just some relatively minor housekeeping checks over specific entries in the tool which monitors the achievement of this standard. The third audit report we've issued in the area is an exempt publication, so I don't think we cover it.
Cover that once we go into private session.
Yeah. Okay, so that's it. Any questions?
Can I just ask the rationale for auditing in the forthcoming plan ICT strategy ahead of cyber security when that's been given a high risk rating and it doesn't look like it's ever been audited, certainly not in in the timescale covered by your report?
I think we have audited it. Let me just see. Oh, it was exempt publication, so it was audited in 2022-23. Yeah, we decided to do. It's due, and we've put it in for the following year. So I've got it down for 2026-27. I guess that'd just be a value judgment that was between cyber security and ICT strategy. It could have gone either way, I guess.
I think because the ICT strategy has not been audited before.
Yeah, we were thinking of it last year, the year before as well. So it was yeah.
Yeah.
And, sorry, at 216, you refer to having more guidance where single suppliers are used without going to tender. How many instances of that you find during your?
So which one's that? Where's that?
Paragraph 216.
Which page?
I'm on a screen, so.
Is it 37? 37, 38.
I'm not getting that.
So is it page 37 that you need to be looking at?
There is a 2.16 there, but that's not in relation to what the comment was.
Sorry, paragraph 16 of the audit assurance reviews, page 11 on my PDF.
So, all right, procurement, our audit of procurement, so improve controls to reduce the number of. Right, so that audit report will have been in an earlier.
Yeah, that was presented
to an earlier committee. So I have got it on me, but to actually identify the.
You can always come back to me after.
Yeah, I will do. I can send you the audit report. It's got you'll have the figures in it. Yeah, I can send that to you.
And just for information, we did take a report to Finance and Resources in January as well that did give an update, an annual update, not March meeting, that gave an update on all the single source suppliers that we have been the last year.
I wasn't on committee at that point.
No. And that'll be an annual thing that we do now.
I've read a bit of it somewhere, but I've lost my place now on here. The process and procedure for working out the timetable and what we audit and how and what. When and what we audit. Is that basically a decision between yourself and well, can you just fill us in? I'm sure I read it somewhere. I just lost
talk
it.
about your risk man.
So
how do we come up with the programme?
Yeah. So we on your pages 58, 59, you've got a sort of list called the first column is like audit universe. So it's a list of things which we potentially would look at. So that's a starting point, and then we look at which ones are due to be looked at because we've not looked at them for a while. We rate them high, medium, and low. So we sort of decide, we'll do these. These are due. These are high risk. And then I'll meet Bev, and Bev will talk to SLT, and they'll say, well, perhaps you should look at this. Perhaps this is more topical. And it's a mixture of everything. So it's a discussion over what's risk, what's emerging. What standard things we always look at, and we actually try and do so maybe one on capital, one on IT, one finance system. So we try to sort of cover the big areas as well.
But as the year and as time goes on, if during sort of normal finance meetings or indeed any other meeting, if something sort of happens, if an alarm bell rings somewhere,
we'd have that conversation and adjust the plan, so something had come out that we'd think we'd wait till the following year, and we'd bring that in.
So we're constantly reviewing it, in effect.
An audit will slip. Sometimes we'll say, we won't do that this year. We've got 6 in for this year. It might happen, we'll say, we won't do that one this year because something else has emerged, and we usually put it into the next year.
So there is the flexibility there. Thank you.
Okay, further questions? No. Thanks to you, Bev, and your team, and everybody else. Go through the minefield.
We'll come back to the last when we go into that.
Yeah, we'll come back when we come back to the back of the book. So we move on then. On to item 6.
Yeah, so item 6 is the external audit plan. So KPMG, Richard and Bilal are both here.
Yep, I'll take this. Thank you. Chair. This paper starts on page 79 of the pack. This is our draft external audit plan for the period. It's draft because we spend we get through all the planning and then we kind of refreshing this all the way up to the time when we start our on-site visit in a few weeks' time. So it's kind of under review, but I don't think it will change in any significant manner. So it's a fair summary of our audit plan. I think what this does, it sets out the key risks that we think will impact the financial statements and our response to them. Before I dive too far into the detail, I appreciate it's a newly formed committee, so just to introduce myself, I'm an external auditor. I work for KPMG, so I'm independent of the Fire Authority. I'm a full-time professional auditor, so I spend my time auditing public sector bodies and have done for 20 years. I'm a Nottinghamshire resident, so I've got a vested interest in this authority being an effective authority and providing value for money because I pay the taxes. So I'm very interested in that being the case. And my family, we live in Nottinghamshire, we live in Cochrane, so I'm local to the area. And my colleague Bilal is the assistant manager, and to summarise, he does all the work and then I sign it off. So that's the split of work between the two of us. So to go into the paper, I'd like to pause before I go into the detail of the kind of normal report on page 3, which is page 81, which is entitled Impact of the Backstop. This may be something you're familiar with in terms of the kind of history of local authority audit. I won't dwell on it too much, but it's a really important context that kind of plays through our delivery of the audit this year and indeed last year, which is our first year as your auditors. In the preceding contracts of doing external audit in England and Wales, there was issues with delivery, basically. That's a summary. So it's a national sector issue. So lots of local authorities were in the position where their audits were either not reported on time or at all. And so there's a backlog of audit opinions being issued across the country, and that impacted the Fire Authority here. So there were auditors that basically were struggling to get the resources to deliver the audit. There's some issues in terms of the way in which the accounts were prepared and the kind of the accounting standards and rules that were being followed that made it more complex. But basically, auditors were struggling to deliver that contract. We weren't part of that contract. We used to do local government audit. I've spent most of my career doing it, but I've had a 5-year break with a route out of that process. Last year was the first year of that route out of the process. It's called Rebuilding Assurance. And basically the idea is that to enable auditors to basically issue what's called a disclaimer audit opinion. And what that is that it's an audit opinion that basically says we haven't been able to deliver the audit for one reason or another. Therefore, you can't rely on the audit opinion. In effect, there are 1 or 2, in some cases 3 years of accounts where basically there is an audit report in there, but it's called a disclaimer report, and if you read the detail of it, it basically says we're not giving you any assurance. So that is the position. So that was issued in various places, including here. There was some reports that were issued by our predecessors that had that content. But the way in which accounts work is that if you have a disclaimer, if you have a problem, you need to resolve it before you get a clean report, because that number in your accounts, if you're not happy with it, hangs around. So that you have a year where your accounts weren't signed off. So the asset values, the reserves level, the most important level, the debtors and creditors, all those numbers, in that year that my predecessor didn't sign off, those numbers are the starting point for all the transactions for the years that follow. So whilst last year we did a full audit, there was a couple of matters that we basically ran out of time because the kind of time limited backstop, which is what it's called. We had to report by the end of February, no matter where we were in the process. There were a couple of items that we didn't finish, but compared to previous years, we did vast more amounts of work. That audit opinion was also a disclaimer audit opinion. So if you read it, technically you can't rely on the accounts from my point of view. I'm not giving you the assurance, but that is driven by the fact that the opening balances were subject to that report by our predecessor. So me as auditor here and auditors across the country are working with finance teams to basically unpick that and year by year build the assurance levels that we can give. So last year I was able to complete the vast majority of work on the INE account of the authority and also a lot of the balance sheet of the authority. And that means the opening balances for this year, I can rely on a little bit more. The disclaimer kind of kicks in when you reach a threshold of things that you're not happy with. You have to disclaim, so you can't rely on anything. But we're getting closer. So my intention is that this year we're going to continue on that process. There's some guidance that I can share the report with members if they're new, if you haven't seen it before elsewhere. Basically, there's a timeline that's been set by a kind of outline, not set, by the Financial Reporting Council, that they expect that most authorities that had a disclaimer opinion last year would have a disclaimer from the new auditors. This year will also have a disclaimer by the new auditors, and it's next year is the year where they expect that if everything goes to plan, they'll be able to get to something that's a bit better. And it's year 5 of that contract, so the last year of my current appointment is where they expect auditors to issue a clean opinion. That isn't set in stone. If we can do it earlier, we will. And because last year we made such good steps, I'm actually quite hopeful that we might be able to get further along that line quicker. Whether we can do it this year is open to interpretation. There was a new set of guidance that was issued about a month ago by the National Audit Office that basically gave auditors the route through solving the problem that was historic. So up to that guidance, all the guidance was about how do you move forward. But the guidance has now been issued about how do you solve the problem of the years that weren't audited. And so now that has been released. We as an audit firm are going through that. I sit on the technical group for KPMG and help work at that for local authorities. There's a small group of us within KPMG who work on that, and I sit on that. We're coming up with a plan to basically, these are the steps that we'll follow to do the audit work, to recover the assurance when the audits didn't happen for whatever reason, so that we can then get to a point and issue a clean opinion. And what we all want to do is have the audit in the right timetable, issuing an opinion in a normal manner. Because at the moment, last year, Bilal had to work on the audit of yourselves, and Bilal works on all the fire authorities that we do in our team, so just 3? Yeah, 3. And so that means that the timeline just stretched. So the time, it wasn't the normal timeline of kind of summer to issue the report in September that we normally want to do. We're doing it all the way through the autumn, all the way through the spring. And so we want to get away from that because frankly as a firm it really messes up our ability to know what we're doing and when. So we're as desperate as the finance team to get back to that normal timetable and deliver a normal audit.
As a disclaimer, do you do the section? So in other words, are we getting a clean sheet on this as we roll forward, or is the whole system partially in the disclaimer?
So basically both. I'm sorry, that's a really complicated answer, but practically that's how it works. We tick off bits by bits. And so that is what we've done last year. We're happy with your cash, the pension balances, most of the transactional work within the year, so payroll costs, that kind of thing. But it gets to a point where if there's either a really important number you're not happy with, or there's a large proportion of the accounts that you're not happy with, you go to disclaimers. The steps in between are things, a qualified opinion, so which is we're happy with these accounts apart from that bit. An adverse opinion, which is we're happy with the accounts apart from these things and they're really important, so the whole opinion's not reliable. Or disclaimer, which is we've tried but we can't issue any assurance. And so at the moment, despite the fact we've done loads of work, it's really frustrating. We still issued a disclaimer last year and we probably will this year. Don't know. But building it block by block over the years, that's the guidance we've got to follow. And as soon as you get one block sorted, that's really helpful because it means that the audit of next year is a lot easier because you can just look at the movements and transactions. So that's exactly how it works. So moving on from the backstop, happy to take any further questions on that before I dive into the normal paper. So now this is where the kind of normal audit plan that you get from in a normal audit year. So page 4 is our materiality. Our materiality for this audit is just over £1.8 million. So that is the level of error that our audit procedures. Page 82. 82, so yeah, just over there. So 1.8 million is our materiality. That is the, in effect, the tolerance that we set to the audit. That's what we're looking to find errors of that size or above. We kind of discount that for our testing, so we do all our samples to try and find an error of just under 1.4 million. Both of those numbers have changed from last year. We set it as a percentage of your expenditure. That process is common for all audits. But you'll note that it has increased slightly. We've increased the percentage from 2% to 2.5%. That typically we'd get to about 3%, and so that movement is to reflect the fact that in that first year we were able to get a lot of assurance and get a lot of work done. We'll be able to build our knowledge of the finance team and confidence that the finance team know what they're doing, controls operate in a decent manner. That means we can have our materiality a little bit higher. In some audits, we started at 2 and we've gone down. So the fact that we've gone up to 2.5% is a positive step for you, because it means that you're getting kind of more to the normal position of our materiality threshold. But clearly that's a very big number, so any issues that we find either that have been amended or not amended for above 92,000, that's the threshold we use to report to you. That is 5% of our materiality, so we'll keep, that's the threshold where below that we won't report to you because there'll be lots of kind of commas moving here and there and rounding differences. We don't report everything, but we'll report everything to you which is above 90,000. Moving on to page 7, which is page 85 of the report. The next few pages deal with our significant risks on the audit. So these are the big things that I'm worried about as part of the audit, and this will drive large-scale audit work in response to this. The first one is a set risk by the audit standards. So every external audit that happens will have management override controls as a significant risk. That happens in every audit. The reason that's there is because management are in a very specific position that they are able to manipulate things, override controls, so that they could get the financial outturn to be in a different place if they wanted to. And so that kind of inherent risk is set within every audit. So we have a series of work where we look at accounting estimates and assess whether there's bias within them. We look at the accounting policies. We look at a series of adjustment journals that are put through. We do lots of analysis using some quite new data analysis tools that when we get back to normal I may do a demonstration of those, but we've got lots of other stuff to go through at the moment. And so that kind of audit programme is pretty set, and we've got a large scale amount of work to respond to that. Moving over the page is probably the biggest, riskiest number on your accounts, which is the valuation of the post-retirement benefits, so the pension liability number. We think that is a risk of error simply because it's an estimate, and so there's a lot of estimation uncertainty within there. So you could quite easily get an error of £1.8 million in that balance by quite a lot of different angles. So we cover that in many different ways. We look at the data and how that feeds into the liability. So it's prepared by an actuary. We assess whether the actuary is suitably qualified. We look at the assumptions that they have made. So how long will people live? How long will people work for? What will their future pay increases? All those things. We get a KPMG specialist to assess that. So there's KPMG actuaries who spend all their time looking at pension funds and assessing the kind of credibility of what the estimates are within this one. And so we spend a lot of our time with our experts going through those assumptions, and we'll report back to you against each of those aspects. Because it really is the main area of accounts that could have an error within that. So we spend a lot of time on that. Over the page onto valuation of land and buildings. This is tagged as an other audit risk, so it's not a significant risk under the standards. That's got some kind of specific impacts in the audit standards, but so our audit does certain extra things when it's a significant risk. But we still think valuation of land and buildings is a big enough risk, again, because it's an estimate. It's done by professional valuers. So we also do a series of work in regards to that. We think it's basically the biggest other risk, so that's why we've included it within our report, because we think it's of interest to the audit committee and of interest that is right. but it doesn't reach the threshold of a significant risk. The large reason for that is that valuing land and buildings, there are 2 or 3 different ways of doing that, and in our first year we were able to kind of confirm that you follow the kind of less risky approach to valuing buildings. There are some other things that if you value buildings on the open market or use rental yields or use various different ways of valuing a building, it would be more complicated, so there's more risk in there. However, for yourselves, because the vast majority of your buildings are held either for office space or for hosting fire officers, then the way in which you do that is depreciated replacement cost, which is how much would it cost to rebuild and then how old is the building. So it's a bit easier to do, so that's why we have that at the lower level of risk. Moving on to page 16 of our report, which is our value for money work, page 94 of the pack. What this page does is that it outlines the process that we're going to follow. We're partway through this, but I'd like to kind of point people to this at this time of year. So what we do is that we do a series of procedures to understand how the Fire Authority does things. So how does it make decisions? How does it set budgets? How does it report financial performance? How does it consider risk? That kind of thing. And then we basically review those, see if we think there's any gaps in those processes, compare them to other approaches that other fire authorities have, and then we come to a kind of initial outturn assessment as to whether we think there is a risk of a significant weakness within those arrangements. Last year, we concluded that there were no significant weaknesses in arrangements, but that's something that we do quite a detailed series programme of work to go through various different things, review lots of committee meeting minutes and papers, interview people, understand various different aspects of that. And so that work is ongoing. We've started it, but it's ongoing and will continue over the summer. And then we'll provide a public commentary on arrangements. So if you're interested, last year's will be on the website, so you can show what we thought last year, and we will update that and issue a new public commentary so that the public can see what an independent person thinks of the arrangements in place. And I'll skip forward to page 19, which is page 97 of the pack. This is the timetable as we stand at the moment. This is broadly what we're planning to do is to do a normal audit. So we've got your plan here now. We will start our audit in a matter of weeks, I think it is. So Bernard's just finishing another audit for me now, but pretty much straight after that is moving on to doing yourselves. And then that audit and the other audit for fire authorities will happen over the summer. So we'll have a decent position in the kind of traditional timeline of end of September. However, that new guidance about how to rebuild the gap of previous years and the way in which all the legislation works means that we're likely not to actually sign off until February, because that's just the nature of how things have to happen at the moment. So we expect to be able to give you a really good detailed update to the future audit committee in the autumn to let you know our key kind of initial outturn, and then we'll report our final findings later on. That's subject to change as we go through guidance and kind of understand things. That's not ideal, but that's just what the position that we find ourselves in, and that's common to many other local authorities. The last thing I wanted to do before I open to questions is just to point out on page 21 and 22, just page 99 and 100, that we confirm our independence of the authority. We don't have any other services that we carry out for the fire authority. There are some kind of limited bits of non-audit services that we're allowed to under the ethical rules, but we don't do any, so that's quite straightforward. There's nothing to kind of consider from that point of view. So it's been a bit of a canter through. I'm happy to take any questions on our report.
Thanks, Richard. Any questions, Jim?
Maybe. All this auditing, is it done in the background, or does it slow you down, like when often coming to a school district clients to a halt, for example?
It takes up a lot of resource from the finance team, from that the team below him. And obviously we work with KPMG to schedule when they're coming in. One of the key things is knowing our availability, but obviously it takes a lot of work from the team. My input to it's not as intense, but I do certain areas like the value for money information. That's sort of more my area where information's coming from me, and I'm having conversations with Richard.
So you do the VFM, not these?
No. So I mean, input. They're obviously looking at it, but they need information from me about what we're doing. Yeah. So I feed into
Just a
Richard.
quick question, and it's a comment I've just picked up on this on the page, and it says that Richard, you're the second year into this process for us, but we're required to change every 5 years our audit partners. Now, KPMG being the audit partners, I'm assuming is the right terminology, yes? So does that mean that we would go to somebody like BDO, Stoy, or someone like that after the 5-year period and then start the whole process again?
I'm happy to respond if you'd like. So audit partner in that context is the individual.
Right.
I'm not a partner, I'm a director, but the legislation is audit partner.
So we're talking about you as an individual, not KPMG as a business?
Yes.
Right, okay.
And so, our contract is actually currently only for 5 years. I think under the current tender it could be extended to 7.
Yeah.
Naturally, because it's a national kind of framework, I expect that will be retendered at some point, either at 5 or 7, and then whether we're reappointed or not is subject to change. What that is getting at is pointing out that I am independent at least for 4 years. It probably could be extended to 7. I am not aware of any time PSA have turned that down. Practically, if we consider it independent, the actual rules normally is 10 years. So from a KPMG point of view, I can do it for 10 years. So I would expect to be able to do 7 if needed. I'm part of a larger team though, so there are 10 of us who are partners and directors who work in my team, of which 8 are accredited to do local authority audits. So if I reached that period and couldn't do it, we'd hand over to another partner or director who has experience doing local authority audits. So
my only point really was that the way I read that was that we'd then take KPMG out of the system and bring another auditing company in to then start the whole process again, and their audit process might be slightly different to KPMG's, and then we start back at the, that we haven't achieved the standards again. So that was the only point of that particular question. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, just to add, like the auditors, we're part of the PSSA process in terms of the appointment of the auditors. So they when we go through that re-contract exercise again, like Richard said, it could be that we were allocated different auditors, but that's that national framework of how that works. So we could, but then you work together, don't you, and look back at the previous auditors' information anyway, don't you, as well.
In a normal context, it's a bit smoother in terms of handover, because normally the audit handover is clean, and so you review the audit procedures, you have a conversation with the previous people to understand the kind of background stuff, and go from there. If there wasn't the framework contract, if it was a normal kind of tender by tender process, quite often, for exactly the reasons you've said, people tend to reappoint the same auditor because there's a change, there's a risk to change. People often get 1, 2, 3 reappointments, but equally, a fresh pair of eyes is helpful sometimes. After just 5 years, personally, I think there's a lot of cost to change auditors, and there's downside to it. But I'd say that because I want to keep a contract, right? So I think there's plus and minuses of changing auditors, but I agree that the risk after 5 years is quite a lot. So.
Thank you.
Okay, it's beginning to straighten itself out now, because only a few years ago it was a mess. And it wasn't just a mess for this authority, it was a mess for every single council, county council, whatever. It's getting a riot state, isn't it, Richard? So it's beginning to now make sense.
Yeah, so I do 5 local authorities, and there's only 1 that was clean when I took it on.
Yeah.
So the other 4 are going through this process to rebuild.
Yeah.
And that's quite average.
So we're getting there. And the fees went up as well, to mention that. Significantly. Richard.
On a pedantic note, if I'm honest with you, this report, in the old days, it would have been printed out, glossy, printed and all the rest of it. Does it go anywhere else apart from just for us today to this committee? So I know it says draft on here, but will it be a final version of this?
So the way it would normally work is if it significantly changes, I'd bring a new report to you.
Yes.
If it doesn't, I would, as part of an updated report, say that report kind of stands. So the last year we issued a report, I can't remember whether it was now or whether it was the next committee, but when we did, at the final stage, there was a couple of sentences at the front just saying our plan didn't alter, so that stands as the final. So that's the way we normally update.
Okay.
But this is published, so it's on the internet, so
Right.
it's available to the public.
Can I make a suggestion? And
Yeah.
I'm not being sarcastic here. Proofreading. If you look at page 2 of the report, which is our page 80, the introduction page.
It says Bedfordshire.
It says Bedfordshire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I know we've got
Well
local. We've got
spotted, Richard.
reorganised. Do we get the brown? Do I get the brownie point for
Brownie point for that one, mate.
Thank you.
You can have a cup of coffee.
I've only just, funny enough, I've read this quite a few times over the last few. I only just noticed, just saw it, just flashed in front of me. There we are.
We used to have a guy, Ian Gedlin, he was Tony Gillam, he was a Liberal Democrat, and he was absolutely brilliant at this, and the officers used to want to strangle him at the end of the meeting. Yeah, he got it spelled that wrong, right? Commas in the right
I
place.
think was Tony on the audit committee at Gedlin?
No, not now.
No, he
No,
was.
he's finished
though.
that, yeah.
'Cause I used to audit Gedlin
yeah.
probably a decade ago.
Yeah.
How to get out?
Yeah, he was great at it, but he just... Right, that page.
Apologies. That's not good enough.
Okay, have we scrutinised it enough, and you've got the offer from all
think I
round,
just-
if there's something you see?
I've just got
Sorry,
one
Terry.
set of questions, just briefly. The audit fees.
Yeah.
We've got 3 TBCs in there.
So I think that was a drafting point in terms of the status of the report. So the first 2 won't be fees this year. So ISO 305 revised and ISO 240, they basically are the reason for the increase. Right. So your increase from 94 to 105, your fees are set by PSAA. So the way the contract was that initially was that all the audit firms said we would do audit for this much. And then and this is the total number of clients that we have space for. That's generally how it worked. And then PSA take all that information together and allocate it out, and they basically blend the rates. So what we get paid isn't the same as that number. It's different. All the audit firms have different depending on where they were in the tender. And for ISO 305 and ISO 240, they were changes last year that led to the first year of adoption. They weren't in the base fee, so there are new things we have to do under the standards. We price it up ourselves and say this is how much it is. And so what PSA have done is they've taken all of those things, and somewhere on the website, it's not in this report, is it? There's basically a set fee, so all fire authorities will pay, I think it's something like £5,000 or £7,000 for those 2 standards, and it's built into the base fee. So that's one reason for the increase, and the rest of it is inflation. Really. Okay. So they're the 2 reasons for the changes. So ISO 305 revised and ISO 240 will be nil, because they're not relevant. Disclaimer reporting, that is a big TBC, because that depends on, do we try and solve the problem? Because basically, without this guidance, the only way to solve it would be to go back and do 3 years worth of audit. So that TBC would be £200,000, but we haven't got the resource to do that. Clearly, as a taxpayer, I don't want that to be the cost. So that number, I expect it'll be higher than £5,000, but it will be in order to get us out of this mess and get us to a point where it's clearer. So that one is subject to change. And I understand, and Bev may have more knowledge about this, is that there's grant funding available for that. I don't know whether that's flowed through to yourselves yet.
You've got some grant.
No, we've got some grant in previous years. We've not had any allocation this year. No.
Okay.
In terms
I think
of
it may
backlog.
be. So the part of the delay in issuing of the guidance was about an agreement about how it was going to get funded.
Right.
So
Where does that grant come from? Or where did it come from?
From central government,
Right.
yes. But there wasn't anything this year, no. But there has been in previous years. But there
it may be coming.
Yeah, it might
I can't
be.
say for certain, but I think it might be.
Yeah, it might be something that comes as part of this year's settlement, potentially.
Okay, all reasonably happy?
Yep.
Yes, we'll move on to item 7. I don't know whether you've seen this before, because we've not had the meetings at county, but the item 7 is exclusion of the public, to consider the exclusion of the public from the meeting during the consideration of the following item in accordance with section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972 under schedule 12A part 1 paragraph 3, on the basis that they have in regard to all circumstances of the public interest in maintaining the exemption of outweighs the public interest in disclosing information. So I'll move that from the chair if it's seconded. We agreed? Okay.